Before Two Guys Playing Zelda was formed, Red and I always found ourselves debating various unclear subjects of Zelda.
It's actually one of the main reasons why this channel was started, to bring various opinions on the same subject matter within the Zelda franchise.
One of these subjects is Arbiter's Grounds, and what exactly is it? Arbiter's Grounds has always been a very interesting place since we first visited it in Twilight Princess. It's one of the few dungeons in Zelda where we get a backstory before we enter the place.
And because of this backstory, there have been a lot of theories based on Arbiter's Grounds. Is it the Spirit Temple from Ocarina of Time just many years later?
Is it an entirely different structure than the Spirit Temple located somewhere else in the Gerudo Desert?
Just who is the mini-boss Death Sword? Why are there numerous undead enemies roaming around the place? And why can Stallord's skeletal remains be found there?
Initially, Red and I had different ideas on what Arbiter's Grounds is. We took those ideas and combined them into one theory that we think is very plausible.
We're here today to give you our theory that Arbiter's Grounds stands directly over top where the Spirit Temple used to be.
First, let's start with a definition of what a theory is. According to one of Merriam-Webster's definitions, a theory is an idea that is suggested or presented as possibly true, but that is not known or proven to be true.
And that's exactly what this video is. It's an idea of what we think could be true about Arbiter's Grounds, but it has not been proven to be true.
In reality, this video is just an opinion of events that happened during a certain time period. If you have a different theory completely, or think some of our ideas are right and some are wrong, then that is completely fine. It's what makes Zelda fun and interesting.
We're at the end of Ocarina of Time. After Link defeats Ganon, Ganondorf is sealed away in the Evil Realm by Zelda and the Six Sages. Zelda then sends Link back in time to when Link was a child via the Song of Time.
After placing the Master Sword in its pedestal located within the Temple of Time, Link makes his way to Hyrule Castle. The last image we get in the game is where Link meets up with Zelda in the castle gardens.
At this time, Link warned Zelda about Ganondorf's plan to take over Hyrule. Since we are back in our child time period, Ganondorf is still roaming free.
With this information in hand, the Hylians go to war with the Gerudo. The main reason being that they want to stop Ganondorf before he obtains the Triforce of Power and eventually becomes the evil Demon King Ganon.
And towards the end of the war, the Gerudo all retreat to the Spirit Temple kind of as a last stand. The Hylians demolish the Spirit Temple and kill some of the Gerudo. The remaining ones they capture, and one of those is none other than Ganondorf.
Then after demolishing it, they built Arbiter's Grounds directly over top of it as a place of celebration and entertainment that will also function as a prison. The celebration takes place on the top level, which we will get to in a while. The lower level serves as the prison area.
Now a question you're probably asking yourself is, but doesn't the Spirit Temple and Arbiter's Grounds appear to be in different locations within the Gerudo Desert? Well, comparing the Ocarina of Time and GameCube Twilight Princess maps, Arbiter's Grounds does appear to be south of the Spirit Temple.
However, if we use Hyrule Castle as a point of reference, both structures are located directly west of the castle on their respective maps, and Royal Grounds have a tendency to stay in the same location over time.
This tells us that there's a good probability that the structures are in the same location. Why do the two structures appear to be in different locations? Well, one possibility is that it could be that the slight inaccuracies in the maps over time. Remember that each game is just a legend, and legends passed down can be interpreted differently.
Another possibility is that in Ocarina of Time we travel through the Haunted Wasteland, where you have to use flags and invisible guard just to get through that place. Is it conceivable that a person designing the map could have gotten confused on where they were exactly at?
And a final possibility we thought of is that the shifting sands of the desert change the landscape over time. A good example of this happening can actually be found in Skyward Sword, where the Lanayru Sand Sea used to be an actual sea.
One will notice that within both structures there are two statues that look very similar. Some people think that this is the same statue, but their difference in size says otherwise. The statue in the Spirit Temple is much bigger than the one located within Arbiter's Grounds.
And others think this statue serves as some type of monument to serve respect to the Gerudo race. We don't agree with either of these two things.
You will notice one glaring difference between the two statues. The statue in Arbiter's Grounds has an aggressive snake wrapped around it, while the one in the Spirit Temple sits on top of the statue's head and looks welcoming. None of them, I hate snakes, so neither one of them I really like at all.
Well, we think it's likely that the Gerudo used the statue in the Spirit Temple for spiritual reflection. Does the statue in Arbiter's Grounds look like something you would find spiritual reflection?
No,
well, not you.
definitely not me, exactly.
But the aggressive look coming from the snake would not make it welcoming.
We think the Hylians built this as a way to show disrespect towards the Gerudo race, basically saying this statue is not for spiritual reflection. They even put a trap around the statue. If you light the wrong torches, Stalkins appear.
Now we arrive at the celebration and entertainment part. We believe the main form of entertainment was Stallord just murdering the prisoners in some sort of gladiator-type battle. It can be compared to something like the ancient Roman Colosseum, where slaves and prisoners were forced to fight to the death.
At that time, that would have been so awesome to see.
Oh, it would have been a spectacle, that's for sure.
Definitely. Now, one question we found ourselves asking was, how did Stallord get out to Arbiter's grounds? With an army of many Hylian soldiers, we think it's possible that they were able to capture Stallord and take him out to Arbiter's grounds.
Now, where did he actually come from? Who knows? Maybe he came from the Death Mountain area as something like a descendant for Volvagia, the Fire Temple boss. But that's a different conversation for a different day.
Definitely. One will quickly notice that there are no cells located in Arbiter's grounds. We think that prisoners were just shackled to the floors. For all you Lost fans out there, and we try to reference Lost whenever we can because we're big fans of the show.
Yes, we are.
Recall Richard's arrival on the Black Rock.
And at this time, the top of Arbiter's grounds was open. Spectators would stand around the circular ledges and look down towards the middle, similar to something like the Globe Theatre in London.
After some time, the celebration got old, like many things do, and Arbiter's grounds fell into neglect.
Spectators started decreasing in numbers, and after a while, Arbiter's grounds is partially abandoned, with only the warden, prisoners, guards, and Stallord remaining there.
The warden and the guards were left there because someone had to look after the remaining prisoners. Stallord is left there to starve to death as they no longer found entertainment value from him.
You think Stallord would be enough to look after the remaining prisoners?
Yeah, that is true. That is true.
But feeling unappreciated and abandoned themselves, the warden and the guards really lacked motivation for institutional control. And this is when the symbols in the Arbiter's grounds came to be. The Gerudo wanted to leave their mark there and something to be remembered by since their spirit temple had been destroyed.
Many people think that the symbols are there because they helped in the construction of Arbiter's grounds. At this time, they would basically been slaves for the Hylians after winning the war. Do you think the Hylians would have let them inscribe those symbols while constructing their place of celebration?
Nope.
Definitely not. We think these symbols had to come later.
And then one day the prisoners revolted. During this time, the warden and the guards were killed, along with some of the prisoners, of course, in the fighting.
Yes.
The remaining prisoners escaped and disguised themselves into society.
The warren spirit never left Arbiter's grounds, and is now represented by Death's Sword. The four main guards of each section are represented by the four Poes. Ray will now describe how he broke the four sections out.
Well, there are essentially 6 floors within Arbiter's grounds. You've got 4 floors and 2 basements. So one floor was reserved for Stallord, another floor was most likely reserved for storage type things, leaving 4 floors or sections for the prisoners. The remaining guards that were killed are represented by the Stalfos we find throughout Arbiter's grounds.
The top level is formed sometime after full abandonment, and the mirror Twilight is brought out there. The royal family determined it would be safer in the desert because of less human traffic.
It was probably recently stored in Hyrule Castle for safekeeping after the interlopers were exiled to the Twilight Realm during the Interloper War.
Now that Arbiter's grounds is abandoned and so far out in the desert, is a perfect place to perform their executions, which is sending someone to the Twilight Realm via the Mirror Twilight.
And prior to the Mirror of Twilight being out there, Stallord was their main form of execution, as we mentioned earlier.
Many years after the events of Majora's Mask, Ganondorf is brought to Arbiter's grounds for execution. Since Ganondorf is so powerful, they plan on eliminating him and not sending him to the Twilight Realm. They do, however, know this is a second option if something were to go wrong with the execution, which it did.
After the failed execution, they banish Ganondorf to the Twilight Realm and close off the desert in an attempt to prevent any of his followers from bringing him back. After this, they bury the Mirror of Twilight on the top level of Arbiter's grounds. It was not buried before the execution because there are no visible chains like we see when Link finally arrives at the Mirror Chamber, and his arrival concludes our theory.
In this video, we tried to cover every important angle we could think of in relations to Arbiter's grounds, but we understand it's near impossible to answer every question about the place.
So what are your thoughts about Arbiter's grounds? Feel free to leave them in the comments section. And if you have a completely different theory, we'd love to hear about it.
We hope you all enjoyed this video. This is our first theory video, and we are excited to do more in the future, so just thanks for watching.